Hello, everyone. This is Carolina Fernandez here, and today we are going to cover in ExamRevision.ie the Spanish course for the oral exam, Living Cert Spanish. So what we're going to do today is how to deal with the Living Cert oral exam that this year in 2022 will be done over Easter, and this is for both higher level and ordinary level students. So what we're going to do, we're going to split it in two. The first part will be the oral conversation, the general conversation, which is 70%, and around 10 minutes. And after I will do the role plays, which is 30%, and it will be around 2-3 minutes. Okay? So overall, the oral exam will be graded out of 100 marks. For higher level, is the 25%. For ordinary level, will be 20%. This year in Easter, in 2022, the exam will be done at some stage between Saturday, the 9th of April and the 24th of April. And it will be done by an external examiner, someone visiting your school, another Spanish teacher who does not know you, and it will be impartial, giving you a grade. Total will be around 13-15 minutes. 10 minutes will be the general conversation. After that, you'll have 1 minute break to read the role play, and 2 or 3 minutes will be the role play that the examiner will give you. The exam will be recorded in case there's an issue in the future, or you are not happy with your grade, or if there are any appeals. Okay, so let's start with the general conversation, which is 70 marks. The examiner will ask you general questions in Spanish. You will have to speak as much as possible. Try to expand all your answers as much as you can. Keep talking. So let's imagine the examiner asks you about yourself. So you start talking about your age, your birthday, how you celebrate your birthday. You can go into physical description, personality description, pastimes. And if at that stage the examiner did not interrupt, then you keep talking about family, friends, and so on. The key thing is that you talk as much as possible. You will normally be required, you will be asked something in the future and something in the past. Towards the end of the exam, they'll ask you one question in the future. ¿Qué vas a estudiar en la universidad? What are you going to study in college? ¿Qué planes tienes? ¿Qué vas a hacer este verano? What are you going to do this summer? O ¿qué hiciste el fin de semana pasado? What did you do last weekend? ¿Qué hiciste el verano pasado? We have to be careful with the verbs all throughout the conversation. We have to make sure we answer in the right tense, past, present, or future. The main topics would be myself, which is the very first thing the examiner will ask you, your daily routine, things you do every day during the week, and different things you do at the weekends, your family, brothers, sisters, extended family, grandparents, your best friend, your group of friends, your classmates, mi casa, my house, description of my garden, my room, chores, donde vivo, my area, my town, my city, mis estudios, anything related to school, subjects, school building, teachers, uniform, school rules, school routine, school timetable, school starting times, closing times, your pastimes, and these pastimes, mis pasatiempos, will be asked in detail. So if you're into sports, they'll ask you about sports in detail. Get ready to talk about sports in detail, or music, or books, or movies, fashion, clothes, or whatever you have an interest in. Trabajo y dinero, if you're working, you'll be asked in detail about your job. Part-time jobs, working experience, maybe if you did TY, they may ask you about when you did work experience in TY, pocket money, what do you spend the money your parents give you on, and future work. ¿Qué trabajo te gustaría tener en el futuro? What type of job you would like to have in the future? Vacaciones, past holidays, plans for future holidays. It could be any holidays. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be verano, summer. Could be Semana Santa, Easter. Could be Navidad, Christmas. Or it could even be El Día de San Patricio, St. Patrick's Day, or Halloween. Planes para el futuro, planes para este verano, planes para el fin de semana, if you're going traveling, si vas de viaje. El mundo de Internet en general, Internet, advantages and disadvantages, ventajas y desventajas. ¿Para qué usas Internet? For what do you use Internet? Cyberbullying, ciberacoso. Llevar una vida sana, healthy living. Hacer ejercicio, comer sano. And a little bit about Spanish culture. They may ask about Spanish traditions, Spanish food, Spanish cities, Spanish-speaking countries, or the differences between Spain and Ireland, or even in detail, what do you do in your Spanish class? What does your teacher teaches you about Spanish culture? Okay, so this will be the main topics. The examiner will not have time to ask you all these topics. If you expand and talk about all this, about as many topics as you can, or you expand all your answers, I don't think you will cover more than 5 of those topics. Because that will be, well, if you do, it will be more than 10 minutes. Bien, so cuando empiezas el examen, when you start the exam, the examiner will ask you introductory questions. You will say, hola, ¿qué tal? Or the examiner will ask you, hola, ¿qué tal? Hola, ¿cómo estás? You answer with a big smile, estoy bien, gracias. The examiner has to romper el hielo, to break the ice with us. ¿Estás nervioso? ¿Estás nerviosa? ¿Estás preocupado? ¿Estás preocupado? Sí, un poco. No, no estoy preocupado. And we'll go with the name. ¿Cómo te llamas? Mi nombre es Daniel. Me llamo Daniel. Soy Daniel. ¿Cuántos años tienes? Tengo 18 años. This is the very first things the examiner will say. So now, the examiner will also ask you to sign a piece of paper where you could see your name and your examination number. At some stage, the examiner may ask you the examination number, which you could say it in Spanish. You don't need to know it by heart. You can read it, but you say it in Spanish. So you will have something called the rolla. So the rolla is a big piece of paper that the examiner has with all your details. So you will have to double check that your details are correct. Name, surname, examination number, date of birth, and after you sign it. And once you sign it, you sit down and the exam starts. So how is the exam going to be examined? Okay, the examiner will ask you the questions. And how would you get top marks between 60 and 70 marks? If the student has an active role and the examiner has a passive role. What does that mean? If the examiner asks you one question and you keep talking, develop all your answers and expand and expand and expand. Of course, at the end of the day, this is a conversation and the examiner will ask you questions or will interrupt. But if you take the lead, you will get between 60 and 70 marks. Now, how would you fail this exam? If the roles change, if it's the examiner, the one that has an active role, asking all the time the questions, and you have a passive role, giving short answers, yes and no answers, then you will not score highly. So as I said, your job is to have an active role and talk as much as possible. Develop all the answers, provide long, fully developed answers. So my advice is that you develop a paragraph about all those topics I mentioned earlier on, and this is a sample. I'm gonna read it, and this is basically an example of if the examiner asks me, how are you? Or asks me about myself, which he or she will at the very beginning, this is what I'm gonna say. And I'm gonna say all this together. It doesn't matter, I'm not going to stop and wait for the examiner to ask me a question. I will say all that. So let's have a look. Me llamo Kian. Soy irlandés. Tengo 17 años. Mi cumpleaños es el 2 de febrero de 1997. Soy el menor en mi familia. Tengo una hermana mayor, se llama Ana. Para mi cumple, este año, mis padres me regalaron un iPhone nuevo, porque mi viejo teléfono se estropeó. Me gusta mucho el regalo, pero prefiero que me regalen dinero para que yo pueda comprar lo que quiero. Soy bastante responsable y organizado. Disfruto de la rutina y del orden. Me considero un poco tímido. Tengo el pelo negro y los ojos marrones. Soy deportista. Juego al fútbol en un equipo local con mis amigos. Entrenamos 2 veces por semana y jugamos partidos los sábados. Oír música en mi móvil es lo que más me gusta. Me llevo bien con mi familia. Claro que a veces hay discusiones, pero nada serio. Mis padres son muy comprensivos y tolerantes. So this is what you would say about you. So I'm just going to do a few stars here because the examiner may interrupt. So for example, when you make reference for your birthday, the examiner could ask you, how do you normally celebrate your birthday, which is the present? How did you celebrate it last year, which was the past? And how will you celebrate it next year, which is the future? So we can, in fact, provide the same answer, but we have to make sure we can change the verbs into the present, the past, and the future. Here you're talking about your sister. So the examiner may interrupt you here, not let you talk anymore, and ask you about your sister and your family. You make reference to your iPhone, okay? So I presume you use the iPhone a lot and you have internet connection. So what do you use your iPhone for? Advantages and disadvantages of having a mobile phone, advantages and disadvantages of the internet. So that's something we have to have prepared. Here I make reference to sports. I'm very sporty. I play football. We train and we play Saturdays. We have matches on Saturdays. They may ask you all about the matches. What was the last score in your match last Saturday? What number do you have in your jersey? What other sports do you like? What teams do you support in La Liga? Okay, here you make reference to música. So the examiner could ask you here about your favorite band. If you play an instrument, what was the last concert you went to? You maybe make reference here to your parents. How do you get along? Talk to me about the parents' names. What do they do? What are they like? And so on. So basically the examiner could interrupt at any time. If they don't interrupt, great. We have to have paragraphs, full paragraphs prepared, and we just say the whole paragraph. What happens if you don't entiendes, if you don't understand a question? That's absolutely no problem. You just have to say it to the examiner. And of course, this is a Spanish exam. We say it in Spanish. Lo siento, no entiendo la pregunta. ¿Puede repetir la pregunta, por favor? And the examiner will have no problem and repeat the question. Or if there is a word that you don't know what it means, lo siento, no sé qué significa. I'm sorry, I don't know what that word means. So just because you don't know one word, you're not going to let that word to spoil your exam. So you just say to the examiner. The examiner will repeat the question or will rephrase the question in a different way so you understand. And if the examiner still sees that you don't understand, then we'll give you a sample answer. Okay, so something along the lines, the examiner could ask you, ¿para qué usas internet? And you wouldn't know what he's asking. So you could say, the examiner could give you a sample answer like, uso internet para ver películas y series en Netflix. So you heard the keywords, uso internet Netflix, películas, series. So then you know what he's about. So you talk, you give an answer about what you use it for. Okay. Where do the students lose most of the marks? Many candidates still confuse the verbs ser and estar. We need to remember the ser is for a description. Soy alta, soy irlandesa, something that is more permanent, and estar is something more temporary or location. Estoy feliz, estoy enferma, estoy en Irlanda. Some examiners, they realized that noted that candidates use the word facilities instead of instalaciones. We're talking especially about facilities in schools and facilities in your area. So we never use facilidades, use instalaciones. En mi instituto hay muchas instalaciones. Tenemos pistas de baloncesto, 2 campos de fútbol, un polideportivo nuevo y pistas de atletismo. Make sure you use the word instalaciones. Only the best candidates use the subjunctive in the correct manner. However, some candidates learn of phrases with the subjunctive included in the sentence. So my advice is that you include 1, 2, 3, or 4 sentences with a subjunctive and you use them in the exam. Be careful, do not overuse the subjunctive. Things like, you could say things along the lines of, ojalá no hubiera uniforme en mi colegio. Espero que los exámenes sean fáciles. Si pudiera, iría de vacaciones a España. Ojalá viviéramos en una casa más grande. Also, most candidates still rely on the preterite tense when speaking about events in the past. Candidates dislike or are familiar with the imperfect tense and the present perfect tense, okay? So we need to know a variety of tenses, especially in the past. If it's something that happened and is once off, we use the preterite tense. If it's an action that has been repeated more than once or refers to an event back many years ago, and you give your age when that happened, is imperfect. If this is something that happens in the past but has some relation to the present, like this year or this week, we use the present perfect. So we should revise all the different tenses. So we show the examiner a good knowledge of the tenses. Also, some students are having problems with the agreements, especially with the adjectives. When describing the uniform, they would say, tengo una camisa blanco, and they don't realize that camisa ends with an A, and they use blanco because they are males. But it doesn't matter if you're a boy or a girl, the word camisa, because it ends in an A and has una camisa, la camisa is feminine. So you should say blanca. Also, some candidates use the infinitive of the verb when answering a question, regardless of the tense required. So, for example, if I ask you, ¿qué hiciste el verano pasado? Some candidates will say, voy a la playa. And they couldn't have used the verb voy because voy is the present. They should have said, fui a la playa. Other candidates, especially those ones who are unfamiliar with the grammar, repeated the form of the verb used by the examiner. So, for example, the examiner asks, ¿cuántas asignaturas estudias? Sometimes the candidates say, estudias 6 asignaturas. Some candidates use the reflexive verbs wrong, and they use things like me prefiero, me odio, and me quiero. They mix it up with verbs like me gusta, me gustaría, me encanta, me importa, me fascina. Those ones are the verbs that follow a pattern like gustar, but prefiero will be on its own, odio and quiero. Okay, some of this linked with this, some the verb gustar, it could be tricky for some students. The correct use of the verb gustar is a challenge for weaker candidates. At some stage, some of the students will say me gusto, which this is, or me encanto. I like myself, I love myself. It's something you would not say in English. You wouldn't say it in Spanish either. When talking about the age, some candidates use the verb ser instead of tener. Soy 17 años. We can't say that, we have to use tener. Tengo 17 años. Some pronunciation issues is also noticeable in some candidates. Some pronunciation difficulties, especially with subjects. This is pronounced biología, not biología, geografía, química, historia. At times the historia, they aspirate the H, and the H is never pronounced in Spanish, it's historia. Some candidates repeated the question structure on the second person form of the verb in the answer. For example, ¿qué haces los fines de semana? ¿Haces los deberes? That's incorrect. They should use the yo form. Hago los deberes. Some candidates were unable to give descriptions of people, and this is something is commonly used. Examiners may ask you to talk about you, describe yourself, or maybe describe your neighbor or your best friend or a teacher, brother, sister, parents, or grandparents. So we need to be familiar with that. Some candidates did not understand the perfect tense question, which is not in the past, it's in the perfect tense. ¿Has estado en España? The answer should have been, sí, he estado en España antes, o no, nunca he estado en España. Overall, there is three main reasons for losing marks. Insufficient vocabulary. Some candidates are not well prepared. You need to have all those topics I mentioned at the very beginning of this lesson prepared, fully developed with a paragraph. Some candidates have a lack of ability to structure sentences. They need to put the subject or the person, they need to put the verb, and after that, what is called the complements, the extra pieces. They cannot change the word order. And many candidates over-rely too much on memorized material, to the extent that if they miss one or two words, the whole thing, they forget the whole paragraph and they start getting nervous and they go blank and they do not make any progress in the exam. Okay? Bien, so now let's move on to the next section, which are the role plays. The role plays are 30 marks. The State Examination Commission has published 5 role plays, and you will only have to study 3. You will not choose one, the examiner will select one on the day. The examiner will not follow any particular order, will be a random. So that doesn't mean that if the previous candidate, the person ahead of you in the exam got role play 1, you're gonna get role play 2 necessarily. Could be anything. After the general conversation, you'll be given 1 minute break to read the role play. The examiner will give you the cards, the role plays with your English. So you can use the English to guide yourself on what to say next. At the end, we're gonna have a surprise question, an unseen question at the end. It has to be a question related to the role play with the same themes. And we always answer with a verb. They tend not to be questions that the answer is yes or no. They will be things like, we're going to have a look in detail, pero, ¿cuál es tu opinión de España? Me gusta España porque la comida es deliciosa y hace buen tiempo. That would be a perfect answer. Bien, so we're going to have a look at the role play cards. And after that, we're going to have a look at the extra questions. So State Examination Commission has published the role play cards. Okay, which there are these ones here, it's just loading. So here, your teacher probably gave you this. It's in State Examinations Commission examinations.ie. So you have here all the role plays. Situación 1, alojamiento. This is the card that the examiner will have on the day. As you can see, it's in the Spanish. The examiner doesn't have to study anything. And this is the card you will get on the day, candidate's card. This is the intro, and this is your part. This is exactly what you will get on the day. Okay? And you read the English, and you take that minute that they give you to read and revise. And these are called turns. So you will have to speak 5 times. This is the first turn, second turn, third turn, fourth turn, and fifth turn. The fifth turn is the extra question. In these role plays, the examiner always starts. So this is role play 1, role play 2, role play 3, role play 4, and role play 5. You can choose 3. And out of those 3, the examiner will choose 1. So now I'm going to go through the pronunciation of all the role plays. So you can have a look. So I am going to read both the examiner and the candidates. So we start with role play número 1, alojamiento. Hola, dígame. Hola, voy a estaré de Erasmus en tu universidad el próximo año. No conozco a nadie en Cáceres. ¿Me podrías aconsejar sobre el alojamiento? Now, here I give you 2 options. Voy a estar o estaré. You choose one or the other one. You don't say both. As long as you express the future, it's okay. No conozco a nadie. This has a K sound. En Cáceres, make sure you pronounce stronger with the A, Cáceres. ¿Me podrías aconsejar? That J is pronounced as a H, aconsejar sobre el alojamiento. Hola, voy a estar o estaré de Erasmus en tu universidad el próximo año. No conozco a nadie en Cáceres. ¿Me podrías aconsejar sobre el alojamiento? ¿En qué parte de la ciudad querrías vivir? Me gustaría vivir cerca de la universidad porque el año pasado viví en las afueras de Dublín y no me gustó nada. Watch the verbs. Me gustaría vivir. El año pasado viví y no me gustó nada. ¿Por qué? Pasé mucho tiempo viajando porque estaba lejos de todo. Si pudiera pasar ese tiempo estudiando, podría sacar buenas notas. Pasé mucho tiempo viajando. Estaba lejos de todo. Si pudiera pasar ese tiempo estudiando, podría sacar buenas notas. Tienes razón, pero sabes que Cáceres es una ciudad muy pequeña y se puede andar desde las afueras a la Plaza Mayor en media hora. Vale, eso no está lejos y el clima es mucho mejor que en Irlanda. Así que consideraré o voy a considerar todas las áreas, aunque preferiría vivir en el centro de la ciudad. We have to remember how to pronounce lejos. El clima is an exception, it's a masculine word. Mejor, H. And you use o consideraré o voy a considerar todas las áreas, aunque preferiría vivir en el centro de la ciudad. And that's role play número 1. So let's go back to the PowerPoint and let's have a look at the extra questions for the role play number 1. Now, these are only practice questions. Anything can be asked in the exam. So these are the questions the examiner could ask. And I gave you a sample answer. Since you have the English, I'm just going to concentrate in the Spanish only. ¿Qué estudias en la universidad? Estudio negocios. Here, if you only say negocios, you're showing the examiner that you're answering the question, and therefore you're replying. But you need to provide a verb in order to achieve full marks. If you only say negocios, they will give you 3 out of 6. If you say estudio negocios, estudio inglés, estudio español, you get full marks. ¿Has estado en España o has estado en Cáceres antes? No, nunca he estado. ¿Prefieres quedarte con una familia o con otros estudiantes? Prefiero estar con una familia. Prefiero estar is the verb. ¿Cuándo llegarás a Cáceres? Llegaré el lunes. I will arrive on Monday. So this is where most of the marks go. We always have to answer with a verb. Okay, let's move on now to roleplay número 2. Roleplay 2 es el portátil roto. So now, hola, ¿en qué puedo ayudarte? Hola, mi portátil se cayó y la pantalla está rota. Lo peor es que tengo que entregar un trabajo mañana y la única copia está en el portátil. So we have to be familiar, make sure we don't aspirate that H. Se cayó, past tense, la pantalla, the double L is pronounced as a Y, la pantalla. Lo peor es que tengo que entregar, that's a soft sound, la única copia está en el portátil. Vamos a ver, ¿qué te pasó? Llegaba tarde y tuve que correr para coger, or you could say para tomar, we say one or the other one, el autobús. Me resbalé y el portátil se cayó al suelo. Y solo me di cuenta del problema cuando me levanté. So here we have some verbs in the past. Me resbalé, portátil, se cayó, me di cuenta, me levanté. Okay, so we have to make sure we pronounce the verbs correctly. Vas a necesitar una nueva pantalla que cuesta 200 euros. Es bueno saber que se puede arreglar, pero vi un portátil de la misma marca y modelo a la venta en el escaparate y solo cuesta 300 euros. We have to make sure we say 300. 300, and we get the right pronunciation of euros, not euros, euros. Okay, so here the keywords we have to be careful with is arreglar, that double R, portátil, portátil, la misma marca y modelo a la venta en el escaparate y solo cuesta 300 euros. Sí, hay una oferta especial esta semana. ¿Quieres comprarlo? Lo compraré o lo voy a comprar. You pick one or the other one. Si puedes copiar todos mis archivos en un nuevo disco duro antes de irme. Y si me dais una bolsa gratis para el portátil. Okay, so we say one or the other one here. Archivos is a word that the students tend to have problems with. Archivos. Archivos. Disco duro y me dais una bolsa gratis para el portátil. So that's role play number 2 for you. Let's have a look at the questions. ¿De qué color quieres la bolsa? What color do you want the bag? Quiero una bolsa roja, for example. ¿De qué trata la redacción? La redacción es de historia, es de español, es de inglés. ¿Necesitas algo más? No, gracias, estoy bien. ¿Quieres pagar con tarjeta o en efectivo? Prefiero pagar con tarjeta. Okay, this one is one that tends to come up a lot. How do you want to pay? So now let's move on to role play número 3. Una autocaravana, un camper. Hola, ¿en qué puedo ayudarte? Soy estudiante y llamo de Irlanda o desde Irlanda. Y estoy interesada en alquilar un camper o una autocaravana, we can use both, por 2 semanas en julio. The words we have to be careful with are alquilar and julio. That J is a H, alquilar is like a key sound. Alquilar un camper o una autocaravana por 2 semanas en julio. Para alquilar un camper hace falta tener al menos 25 años y mucha experiencia al volante. Mi madre va a ser la conductora porque yo no tengo la licencia de conducir. Todavía estoy haciendo clases de conducir y espero aprobar la prueba de conducir en el otoño. So here some words we have to be careful with is haciendo clases de conducir, aprobar la prueba de conducir y otoño. Pues muy bien, tu madre cumple todos los requisitos para alquilar un camper. Ella ha conducido por la derecha en varios países europeos desde hace 20 años. Es una conductora muy cuidadosa y nunca ha tenido un accidente. Ha conducido, we have to remember that the H is not pronounced, han conducido es de K sound. Desde hace 20 años. Es una conductora muy cuidadosa, that's K, cuidadosa y nunca ha tenido, H not pronounced, un accidente. Fenomenal, os alquilo un camper. ¿Tenéis el itinerario previsto? Hemos pasado mucho tiempo en la costa este verano y esperamos poder viajar a Castilla-La Mancha para ver la tierra de Cervantes y Don Quijote, lejos de los turistas. So now the H is not pronounced. Hemos pasado. Verano is the V and the B in Spanish are the same. Pronounced as a B. Verano, viajar, the J is a H, para ver la tierra de Cervantes y Don Quijote, Quijote, lejos de los turistas. And we have some extra questions here, and I have them in the other PowerPoint as well. ¿Cuántas personas van a dormir el camper? Pues mi madre y yo somos solo 2. ¿Cuáles son las fechas que necesitas el camper? Lo necesitaré del 14 y el 28 de julio. ¿Cómo quisieras pagar? Quisiera pagar payment con tarjeta de crédito. Let's have a look. At the questions for the role play. These ones are extra. ¿Qué parte de España te gusta más? Me gusta más el norte de España porque no hace tanto calor. ¿Sabes quién era Don Quijote? Don Quijote era el personaje principal de una novela de aventuras. ¿Sabes quién era Cervantes? Cervantes es el autor de Don Quijote. Es un escritor muy importante en España. ¿Crees que conducir es difícil? Creo que es un poco difícil, pero con práctica será más fácil. ¿Qué más planes tenéis organizados para vuestro viaje? Tenemos pensado visitar Madrid y Barcelona. So you can see, I'm not giving overly complicated answers, but I'm answering them all with a verb. Let's go now with the role play 4. Role play 4 is about el medio ambiente, the environment. Pareces muy contento, muy contenta. ¿Por qué? El Parlamento Europeo ha aprobado la prohibición de los plásticos de usar y tirar. Por ejemplo, los cuchillos, tenedores, cucharas, vasos, platos y las pajitas. Be careful the day of the exam. You do not leave any of them out. Ha aprobado, those H's are not pronounced, ha aprobado prohibición. These cuchillos is pronounced as a Y, cuchillos, pajitas is like a H. ¿Es importante prohibir plásticos de usar y tirar? Sí, es absolutamente imprescindible o esencial. These are synonyms. We can use one or the other one. Será muy bueno para las aguas del planeta. La contaminación causada por los plásticos es un problema grave en los ríos, lagos y océanos. ¿Podemos hacer algo más? Hay muchas cosas que podemos hacer todos. Por ejemplo, en vez de plástico podemos usar papel reciclado, cartón y otros materiales biodegradables. We need to be careful with this word that's to be pronounced wrong. Biodegradables, materiales biodegradables. Hacer, the H once again is not pronounced, ejemplos with a H, and so on. ¿Y ya está? No, como ciudadanos necesitamos ser mucho más responsables y cambiar nuestro estilo de vida. Para proteger el medio ambiente podríamos desplazarnos en bici, viajar en transporte público o caminar más. So we have a few words here that may be a little bit tricky. Podríamos desplazarnos en bici, caminar, viajar en transporte público. And that's role play 4. Let's have a look at other extra questions. ¿En tu colegio recicláis? Sí, en mi colegio reciclamos papel, plástico y comida orgánica. ¿Qué consejo le darías a alguien que no reciclara? Le diría la importancia del reciclaje, le enseñaría lo importante que es reciclar para nuestro mundo, para nuestro planeta, para nuestras futuras generaciones. ¿Cómo funcionan los diferentes contenedores? Tenemos el contenedor negro para la basura general, el contenedor marrón para la comida y productos orgánicos y el contenedor verde para el papel y el cartón. ¿Qué más podríamos hacer? Podríamos evitar usar el coche tanto para desplazarnos y usar más la bicicleta o caminar. Let's have a look now at role play 5. This is the last role play. Remember, you don't have to do them all, you have to prepare 3. You would obviously choose the 3 easiest ones for you. Hola, buenas tardes. Mi coche acaba de averiarse y estoy en la autopista AP6. No sé dónde estoy exactamente. pero pasé por el peaje hace media hora. Mi coche acaba de averiarse, remember the B in the V, pronunciamos como B. Y estoy en la autopista, of course we have to say that in Spanish, AP6. No sé dónde estoy exactamente, pero pasé por el peaje hace media hora. H not pronounced. Debes estar entre Medina del Campo y Tordesillas. ¿Hay alguna señal de tráfico por ahí? Veo la señal para la salida 156 a lo lejos. Podría enviar a un mecánico o tal vez un remolque porque creo que se trata de un problema serio. Veo la señal para la salida, of course we have to say it in Spanish, 156 a lo lejos. That J is like a H. Podría enviar un mecánico, otra vez un remolque. ¿Qué? Porque se trata de un problema serio. Claro que sí. Voy a arreglarlo todo inmediatamente. ¿Podría darme un coche de sustitución para que pueda o para poder continuar mi viaje a Lugo? Es que tengo que recoger a mis padres del aeropuerto de Santiago de Compostela. ¿Podría darme un coche de sustitución? Sustitución para que pueda o para poder. Que pueda o poder continuar mi viaje a Lugo. Careful with the H. With the J, it's like a H. Recoger, this is as well, it's a harsh G. Recoger a mis padres del aeropuerto de Santiago de Compostela. Por supuesto, ¿me puedes describir tu coche? Es un Seat Ibiza. La matrícula es 4620 CFK. Se lo compré a mi tía de segunda mano y no he tenido nunca ningún problema con él. We have to pronounce the word matrícula, está a little bit stronger in the I. Matrícula. We of course have to say both numbers and letters. We can say them in English. Se lo compré a mi tía de segunda mano. No he tenido, the H is muted. Nunca ningún problema con él. And that's the end of Roleplay 5. Let's have a look at the extra questions. ¿A qué hora tiene que estar en el aeropuerto exactamente? At what time do you have to be? Tengo que estar en el aeropuerto a las 7. ¿Sabes si su tía había tenido problemas antes con el coche? No, mi tía nunca tuvo problemas con el coche. ¿Cómo podemos contactarle? Pueden llamarme al teléfono 637-966-382. ¿Viajas solo o con alguien? No, voy yo solo o voy yo sola a recoger a mi familia. So now, this is the end of the role plays. Remember, even though I cover 5 of them, you pick, maybe in class your teacher picks 3. I would personally go for the 3 easiest ones. And out of those 3 is the examiner and not you, the one choosing one. Whatever you do, you have to have those 3 very well prepared. So, how to prepare for the oral exam? The oral exam is around the corner and we have to prepare straight away. So speak as much as possible in class in Spanish with other other students or with your teacher. Maybe record yourself in your phone and play it over and over again. Maybe when you have those paragraphs done, record them on your phone and play them, and it will help you to memorize what you have to say. Maybe practice in front of a mirror. Look at yourself in the mirror and speak to the mirror all the different, and go practice all the different role plays and conversation. Maybe listen to music in Spanish. It will help you with the pronunciation. YouTube videos or even Netflix. It will help you with the pronunciation and with the sounds, and it will be better for your fluency. Okay, so that's everything from me from today. I hope you enjoyed this video about the oral exam. I wish everyone best of luck in the exam, and I'll see you in el próximo video. Watch and learn at examrevision.ie. Adiós, hasta la próxima.